Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Madison. My name is Kelly Crocker and I'm one of the ministers here. Today I am joined by my colleague, the Reverend Kelly Asprooth-Jackson, and the worship team of Drew Collins, Linda Warren, Stephen Gregorius, and Daniel Carnes. The vision of First Unitarian Society is growing souls, connecting with one another, and embodying our Unitarian Universalist values in our lives, in our community, and in our world. If you are visiting us today, welcome. We're so very glad that you are with us. Today is the perfect morning for you to be here if you would like to learn more information about FUS and its programs and activities, for today is our Volunteer and Opportunity Fair. So please, everyone, stick around after service, grab a cup of coffee. The coffee line will be at the kitchen windows as usual. There will also be a coffee cart in the end of the commons. Look for a big pole that says coffee on the top. So if there's a long line here, head down to the end of the commons. Thank you, Franz, for making coffee happen. So it is our opportunity and volunteer fair. Ministry teams, the board of trustees, our programs all have tables out in the commons. It's a great way for you to find more ways to get connected here. Directly across from the doors is the partner church table. It's the last day to sign up for the Great Hungarian Bake Off and picnic. Now, competition for the Bake Off, I just learned this morning, has gotten pretty steep. I have been called on the carpet and I haven't even had coffee. So there's going to be some serious bakes next Sunday afternoon. There's going to be a picnic out on the lawn. We hope that you can join us and you can sign up for that directly across from the doors. Also today, we are very fortunate to have a special guest with us this weekend, the Reverend David Pyle, who is our Mid-America Regional Lead. And David is with us this weekend because, hi David, there he is. David's with us this morning because he was working with our board of trustees all day yesterday. And David will be right in front of the library, across from the doors, next to that partner church table where you can sign up for the bake-off. And you can talk with David about questions about our Mid-America region, about the Unitarian Universalist Association, any questions that you might have for him. And just trust me, it is always just great fun to talk with David. So I encourage you to stop by and meet him this morning. And for those of you connecting virtually with us today, we are glad that you are with us as well. We hope that you will be able to join us for our virtual coffee hour immediately following our 11 a.m. service. It will be at noon. All right, so the information for joining that coffee hour at noon is on our homepage, fusmadison.org. It'll also be shown on the slides at the end of today's service. You can see those announcement slides again, too, if you missed them at the beginning of the service, and we encourage you to stick around and watch those, learn more about what's happening here. And now, I invite you to join me in a moment of silence as we center ourselves and bring ourselves fully into this time as we join together once again in community. In a world that feeds on moral outrage, we are here to cultivate moral courage.
In a time that prizes picking sides, we gather to draw a wider circle.
And in a culture that teaches us to get for what we give and to ask what's in it for me,
we come to practice generosity and to remember we
are all in this together. In the midst of life's bitterness, we choose to sing, to give thanks, to laugh together, and to be keepers of beauty.
To offer a place of belonging for all who come in gladness and in pain. To resist the push to the next moment and the next.
To slow down, to breathe more deeply, to feel a part of something greater for this hour and in this space.
Let us be the change we wish to see.
Come, let us worship together. And I invite you now to rise in all the ways we do as we join together in our words of affirmation as we light our chalice. This isn't just a place of worship. This isn't just a fellowship of like minds. This isn't just a Sunday morning filled with spirit and topped off with coffee and cookies. This is our church, our congregation, where we are building beloved community, where we are opening ourselves to each other, where we trust and love, rise and fall together. This is where we feel safe. This is where we know we are welcomed. This is where we belong. For this gift and so many others, we light our chalice.
Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing. Show to us beauty, vision, and joy. And now let us sing together our opening hymn, number 361. Enter, rejoice, come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Open your hearts, everyone. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Don't be afraid of some change. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
I would love for whoever would like to hear a story to come and join me on the carpet, if you would. Good morning. Thanks for coming out. How are we doing this morning? Good. I'm glad to hear it. I have a story for you today that comes from the Maya people. The Mayans are native to southern Mexico and Central America. And I want to start this story with a question. Do you have a favorite animal? And what's your favorite animal? A hedgehog. Oh, a fine choice. Yes. What do we have? A lion. Okay. All right. What? A cat? Yes. A fine choice as well. A kitten. Okay. Yeah. A jaguar. Are you a plant? Did I pay you money before the service to say that? No? Okay. All right. I guess that's a little bit of a clue. Well, how about this? Whatever your favorite animal is, do you like it so much that you wish you were that animal? Yes? Okay. All right. Well, you're going to like this story then. A bald eagle. Okay. Could fly? Yeah. So here's the story. This story is about a farmer named Nushi. Nushi had a wonderful garden that was full of lots of good things to eat. There were papaya and mamey, which is a fruit I've only ever had when I was in Mexico. I'm sorry? We are not reading a story, we are hearing a story today. So, he had a beautiful garden with lots of good things to eat in it. And he was a pretty kind-hearted person. He liked to share food with the other people in his village, but he didn't like how the animals from the forest would come to his garden and eat all the food that he planted. He did not like that at all. It was very frustrating to him. And he got so frustrated about it that he went to the temple and he said a special prayer to one of the gods that he worshiped. And this God in this story heard the prayer and thought, all right, well, if that's what you want. And what Nushi wanted was to be turned into a jaguar, because if he was a jaguar, then he could protect his garden and none of those animals from the forest would be able to come in and eat his stuff. So Nushi was a jaguar. And he was right. With a jaguar protecting the garden, no animals were going to come in and steal his stuff. But after a while of prowling around and around and around the garden over and over again, he noticed that there were a bunch of hungry people standing out in the forest just watching him from a very far distance. But he could see on their faces how hungry they all were. And so he called out to them, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. I know I look like a jaguar, but I'm a nice guy. You can come and take as much food as you need. I don't want anyone to be hungry. And so they did. All those hungry people, they came and ate, and they weren't hungry anymore. But at the same time that all of this was happening, all of the people in Nushi's village decided that they were going to stop visiting his farm because there was a jaguar that lived there. You see, when Nushi became a jaguar, all the people in his village started looking like animals to him because he was an animal now. And all the animals from the forest, all those animals who'd come and taken his food before, well, now they looked like people to him because he was an animal too. Sometimes it's easier for us to see how alike we are with the people who are in the same community as us. And it's hard for us to see how alike we are from people who are outside of our community. So that's my story that I have for you today. Thank you for listening to it. Have a great class.
Go your way in peace. Wander as you may. Blessed is the path you take. May love guide you on your way.
I invite you now into this time of giving and receiving, where we give freely and generously to this offering, which sustains and strengthens our community here, and also the work of our outreach offering recipient, who this week is the Respite Center. The Respite Center provides emergency child care and respite for children from ages birth through 14, parent support and crisis counseling 7 days a week. In addition to quality childcare, the Respite Center helps parents and caregivers access important resources to help support and stabilize their family. So there's multiple ways for you to share your gifts this morning. There's baskets at the doors of the auditorium. You'll also see on the screen that you can donate directly from our website, fusmadison.org. You'll see the text to give information there as well. And we thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we create together.
Everybody needs some mundane pleasure in their life. Things that, in some way or another, need to get done, but that we can take a special enjoyment in doing. For me, one of those simple pleasures is cooking. Now, unlike some folks who like to cook, I did not learn how to do it growing up. I can remember watching my mother work in the kitchen a great deal and very occasionally helping her out, getting to roll the masa into balls and use her prize tortilla press, for instance. But I didn't learn the practical skills of cooking from her, not directly, at least. Let me just be clear that that wasn't her fault, that was mine. I wasn't ready to learn yet. Quite literally, I wasn't hungry enough. Because the activating reason behind my eventual interest in making food was just that I love to eat it. I grew up eating the wonderful meals my mother prepared, and there came a time when I was no longer living at home and she wasn't there to cook me my favorite dishes anymore. So I had to figure out how to make them myself, with some trial and error and a lot of calls home to ask for recipes and tips. What I discovered over time was some of the same pleasure that I believe my mother takes in her cooking. It feels good to be able to make something delicious and nourishing, to enjoy it yourself, and most of all, to get to share it with others. Food is among our most basic and intimate needs, and offering food to someone else is a powerful way of showing them that we care. So I get a lot of enjoyment out of cooking, and I enjoy learning how to be a better cook, which is what got me interested some years ago in a sort of cooking game show Now, this is different from the cooking game show that is the inspiration for the Great Hungarian Bake Off. Just 1 week from today, you can still sign up if you haven't yet. Now, this is a different game show. You might be familiar with it. Basically, the chefs that are competing in each round, they have a selection of ingredients that all have to be included in the dish. So in one course, they might be required to make an entree that combines kale, rutabaga, marshmallows, and turkey. Or the chefs might be expected to create a dessert that mixes chocolate chips, chestnuts, dried strawberries, and duck eggs. They can use just about any other ingredients they like, but they have to make sure that all four are in there somehow. Usually in each set, there's at least one thing that doesn't seem to go together well with the others, or doesn't fit into the dish that the contestants want to make. So the temptation is to use a little bit of it, just as little as possible, or to try to crowd it out with other flavors. But the goal is to have the best dish that incorporates all of the required elements. The challenge is in taking things that don't seem to make sense together and finding a way to make them into one delicious whole. Grudgingly adding just a little bit of something isn't enough to win the game. Being included is not the same as belonging. Now, I want to give credit here for the origin of that phrase and the deep observation behind it. It came to me from Mac Coleman, an artist and teacher, husband and father, and Unitarian Universalist, whose minister I once had the honor of being for several years, which turned out to be the last of his life. He returned to that phrase repeatedly throughout his life. And in many of our conversations together, he made it the title of one of his major works of sculpture, a tower of welded metal that was emblematic of his abstract, glyph-like style. May his memory be for a blessing. Being included is not the same as belonging. The distinction between the one and the other is important because the urge, the need to feel like we belong is an incredibly powerful force in each one of us. And at the same time, once our own need to belong is met, we often forget how important that need is to everyone else. We might still be ready to include someone new, although even that can be a stretch. But the goal of helping others to truly belong can slip away. Belonging is not an easy thing. In Sumerian mythology, there was a character named Enkidu who was raised by animals and grew to adulthood without ever meeting another human being. When fate and an interest in others like him finally drew Enkidu to the city of Uruk, there was no place for him there. A wild man without language or culture couldn't be accepted into civilized society. Enkidu only found a form of belonging after he fought and wrestled with Gilgamesh, the well-educated and cultured king of the city. The struggle bonded the two men. It connected them. At the end of it, despite their great differences, Enkidu and Gilgamesh shared a common sense of belonging to each other. Our relationships of mutual change are the places where we truly experience belonging. We're really a part of something when it reshapes us and our presence and actions reshape it. Some years ago, the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association asked its membership to spend deep time and attention exploring a seemingly simple question. Whose are we? What person or purpose, thing or things are we ultimately here for and finally accountable to? In one of the many learning sessions devoted to that topic, I took part in an exercise where a colleague and I took turns asking each other that question. Whose are you? Again and again and again. It was exactly the sort of exercise that I could imagine blithely and confidently assigning to a room full of people, and immediately rankled against when I had to do it myself. Like most people who have ever parented small children, I have already spent my lifetime supply of patience for being asked the same question over and over again. Still, bristling and not exactly open-minded towards it, I did actually do the exercise with the other minister that I'd been paired off with. Each time we were asked the question, we were asked to try to dig a little deeper, to find new pieces of the answer. I started off answering quickly, even curtly. By the end, I was in tears. Almost all of my answers were people I knew and communities, like this one, that are important to me and shape who I am. We belong to the things that change us. And at the same time, we also change those things because of the connection we share. A few decades ago, Robin Williams made a movie that was very loosely based on Dr. Hunter Patch Adams, a physician and social activist who mixed clowning into his medical work and tried to address the physical needs of his patients by tending to their emotional needs, to feel safe and respected and loved, to have the chance to enjoy themselves and to laugh. The fictionalized version of Patch Adams was mostly a comedic figure, and his efforts as a peace activist were largely ignored in the film, unfortunately. But during an interview with the actual doctor, after that film was released, the interviewer mentioned that the press surrounding the movie had called him a doctor who believed that laughter is the best medicine. This was Dr. Adams's response. I would never agree that laughter is the best medicine. I've never said it. Friendship is clearly the best medicine. Friendship is the most important thing in life, our relationships with those we love. It was with this in mind that Dr. Adams sought to build a hospital that functions as a community, that fosters a sense of respect and care and belonging between everyone involved in it, the staff and the patients. Without a sense of belonging, the spirit and the body both suffer. Now, as Unitarian Universalists, we are called to build just and sustainable communities in which those in need of a spiritual home may belong. That responsibility comes to us from our ancestors. They sought places where they could be who they were, could practice their faith according to their own understanding in peace, and many of them found that they had nowhere to belong. But this mission does not end at the church property line. Our tradition teaches us that we are all connected, not just person to person, but community to community, so that the same basic values we would apply to our own congregation, that it should be grounded in the practice of love and the search for truth, governed democratically and open to everyone who needs it. These are the same values we must carry with us to the larger communities of which we are a part. In the film The Good Shepherd, Matt Damon's character, a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant and a leading officer in the early CIA, chats with an Italian-American mafioso. The gangster points out to the spook that different ethnic, religious, and racial groups in the United States each seem to have ideals or institutions that bind them together. Religious practices, cultural traditions, family ties. What about you people? He asks. What do you have? The well-born spy answers directly. The United States of America. The rest of you all are just visiting. You see, being included is not the same as belonging. Matt Damon's character was fictional, but that attitude is all too terribly real. It lurks in our national dialogue about race and immigration and everything that it means to be a nation of many different identities. It reveals itself again and again in the rhetoric of fear surrounding all manner of different groups. Italians or Latinx folks, Catholics or Mormons or Jews, socialists or anarchists, take your pick. The voice that says, I belong here. You are just visiting. We live together in a country in which a tremendous number of people live in fear of the law, while their only crime is the persistent desire to belong as a part of this nation. The system in which you and I and all of us are each enmeshed and involved depends upon their presence and their labor. It depends upon millions of undocumented human beings who are hungry for work and have to do it under the table for fear of being caught or deported. The price of produce and much of the restaurant, construction, and hospitality industries rely on this labor in order to function as they do. This situation certainly includes people who are present in the country without official permission. It requires them in order to exist, but it needs them to remain half in and half out. Unprotected, unaccepted, treated as interchangeable and invisible, and kept imperiled and afraid. Included in the most marginal of senses, but without the protection of the right to belong. Every community, every group of people exists on a continuum from exclusion to inclusion to belonging. Every group that we are a part of is in a different place, on a different scale, and needs different sorts of effort in order to move towards that ideal state where there is a place for everyone at the table. But in every case, the project begins in the heart with a willingness to meet another person where they are and know them as they are. In his famous novel, Stranger in a Strange Land, Robert Heinlein imagines how the dry climate of Mars has led to an incredibly simple ritual at the heart of Martian society. Just to share water with someone becomes a sacred act, forming a holy bond connecting two people. The moment that helps you or anyone else feel that they belong in this community or anywhere at all, that moment is not predictable, but it does not need to be any more complicated than sharing a glass of water. Which reminds me to remind you that there are baskets by the exits today holding little vials of water taken from our water communion service 2 weeks ago. They are small but still tangible symbols of the connection we share. We brought the water together. We each may take some of it home to do with what we will. to place on a shelf or a household altar to water our gardens with. I don't particularly recommend drinking it, but you could if you wanted to. It has been distilled. If having something physical and holdable might help remind you that you belong here, I hope that you will take one of those vials home. Author and teacher Brené Brown writes about the deep work of belonging. She says, "The special courage it takes to experience true belonging is not just about braving the wilderness, it's about becoming the wilderness. It's about breaking down the walls, abandoning our ideological bunkers, and living from our wild heart rather than our weary hurt. We're going to need to intentionally be with people who are different from us. We're going to have to sign up, join and take a seat at the table. We're going to have to learn how to listen, have hard conversations, look for joy, share pain, and be more curious than defensive, all while seeking moments of togetherness." As a religious community, and one which has earned its reputation as a place for the pieces that haven't been allowed to fit anywhere else, a lot of this work actually gets done for us in advance. Folks show up here hungry to belong. The hard work of a community with ideals as high as ours is to offer them more than mere inclusion, better terms than "be like we already are, and then you can stay." A willingness to be changed, to grow in unexpectable ways, not just to brave the wilderness, but to become the wilderness. The poet Naomi Shihab Nye wrote a poem about hospitality, which is really just another term for how we build belonging. She wrote, "The Arabs used to say, when a stranger appears at your door, feed him for 3 days before asking who he is, where he's come from, where he's headed. That way, he'll have strength enough to answer. Or, by then, you'll be such good friends you don't care." Let's go back to that. Rice, pine nuts, here. Take the red brocade pillow. My child will serve water to your horse. No, I was not busy when you came. I was not preparing to be busy. That's the armor everyone put on to pretend they had a purpose in the world. I refuse to be claimed. Your plate is waiting. We will snip fresh mint into your tea. In the story of America, the image of a melting pot is often celebrated. Many different ingredients, all simmering and churning together into a uniform whole. I said I'd like to cook at the beginning. I can tell you, if it all tastes the same at the end, something went wrong. The ideal of our community is not to try to hide our differing flavors by boiling them off or burying them, but to gather together into a form that is beautiful, powerful, and yes, delicious, precisely because it incorporates each of our unique ingredients. It is an ideal that the world needs. So let us be bold and imaginative together in finding ways to pursue it within these walls and in the larger world.
Each week we gather, bringing with us the joys and the sorrows of our recent days. We share them here knowing they are held in love. This week we light a candle for Kurt and Kim Steggy. Kurt's brother Jim passed away last week in Florida. Jim was a recent UU and active at his congregation, a wonderful uncle to all his nieces and nephews. An architect like Kurt, he was interested in historic preservation. Jim was loved by many and is sorely missed. And we light a candle and send our healing thoughts to Mary Kessler as she begins recovering from a fall and a fractured ankle. We send Mary our thoughts of healing and strength and hope that she is back out hiking and biking very soon. And we light a candle for domestic abuse survivors and the ones who love them. Especially this morning, we are holding in our hearts one who is trying to find safety for children and pets, who is isolated and feeling alone. May they feel the arms of kindness around them. May they know they are loved. May they find their way back to hope. And we light a candle for the people of Iran who took to the streets this past week protesting the killing of Mahsa Amini. May they effect the change and gain the freedom they seek. And we light a candle for all those about to celebrate the Jewish holy day of Rosh Hashanah, which begins tonight at sundown. A sweet new year to you, and may your names be inscribed for a blessing in the book of life. And we light a candle in solidarity with the people of Ukraine, both in their suffering and in their struggle. Together we yearn for peace for them and for all people, and for an end to all wars of conquest anywhere and everywhere on earth. And if you'll join me now in a moment of prayer with these words from Jess Reynolds. Here you are, here in this holy space, here on this ground that is holy because you are here. Here you are in flesh and bone, filling up this body that belongs to you. Your pumping heart is a wonder because it keeps you alive. Your loving heart is a blessing because it keeps all of us alive. The Spirit of love has a home in you. May we all see that love and let our hearts become mirrors for the compassion at our core. The Spirit of justice has a home in you. May we light our flames from one another until we are all aflame, until we burn out every prejudice we carry in these bones. Here you are, here we are, and holy are we. Blessed be, and amen.
There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. And now will you rise and sing with me our closing hymn, number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed, silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith. Then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Each day provides us with an opportunity to love again, to hurt again, to embrace joy, to experience unease, to discover the tragic. Each day provides us the opportunity to live. This day is no different. This hour no more unique than the last, except maybe today, maybe now, among friends and fellow journeyers, maybe for the first time, maybe silently, we can share ourselves. Blessed be, go in peace. Please be seated for the postlude.